all the way down to verse 14. And we are on part 16. And we're finally finishing the book of 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 through 14. And the title of the message is Stand Firm. Let's pray. Father God, we want to come before you. And God, we thank you, Lord, for all that you're doing, God, in our life. And God, we want to thank you, Lord, for your word. And God, we want to thank you, Lord, for the past 16 weeks where we were able to, God, go into your word. And Lord, see more of you through the writings of through the writings of Peter. God, we want to thank you, Lord, for that. And God, as we come to an end, God, we still pray, Father God, that through the time that we hear and Lord, we read your word, that you'll help us, Father God, to realize, God, how important that it is that we stand firm, God, with you. We thank you, we love you. We give you honor and praise. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Throughout my lifetime, I did a lot of martial arts. And if you are a typical Asian Korean kid, I know most of you guys have been in some sort of martial art. Okay? Just by raising hand. Who here has never done any sort of martial arts? Just one?
Only me?
Yeah, I can tell. Okay? But most of you guys, if you're Korean, right, you do some kind of martial art. And even for me, I did a lot of martial arts over the years. I did Kondo for many years. I did it all the way throughout high school. And then I actually stopped doing it maybe about 2 years ago, but even before that, I did it for a long time. And I did Judo, I did Taekwondo, and when I was in high school, I did wrestling as well. And there's something common about all these different martial arts and sports that I just mentioned. Here's something very important. When you do martial arts, whether it be Taekwondo, Judo, Kondo, or even, like combat sports, right, like MMA or wrestling, one of the things that you do over and over again, especially in the first few weeks and even first month or so, is this. You practice your basic stance over and over again. In Kondo, when you start, this is the first thing that your master will teach you. This is how you hold the sword, right? When you hold it, you're supposed to point it at the opponent's neck, and then your footing is very important. They'll tell you that you have to have it like an 11 way, and then you lift up a little, back foot a little bit, and then you stand straight, right? And even in Judo and Taekwondo, same thing. If you do Taekwondo, one of the things that you do over and over again is your basic stance, right? Taekwondo, right? All that, right? And Judo, same thing. And even in wrestling, I don't know if you see wrestling or ever did wrestling, but even in wrestling, right? You don't fight like this, but in wrestling, you go, right? And the coach will tell you, your stance is very important. Why? Because if you're leaning too forward, what's going to happen? Someone's going to push you and then you'll fall. Or if you're standing too back, someone will push you and then you'll fall back too. In fighting, right, Taekwondo, if your stance isn't good, you're not going to get any power as you kick or as you punch. Right? That's the whole idea about martial art. And they'll teach you, tell you over and over again that your stance is very important. I don't know if you guys have been watching Olympics or not, but as you know, the Winter Olympics started on Friday. And one of the events that was actually pretty amazing was that the girls, the women's short track, right, 3,000, they had the race. And if you remember from the beginning of the match, right, the Team Korea, one of the ladies, she fell. And she was literally like half the distance away, right? But later on, she came back to win it, and then we're moving on to the next round. But even in that sport, you see how important it is that you have a right stance, that you have to stand firm in your stance. And that's the lesson that Peter wants us to tell us today. As he's closing up his letter, the important issue that Peter wants to focus upon is this. If you are a Christian, make sure you are standing firm. He's not obviously talking about physically standing firm. What he's talking about is in terms of spirituality, it's important that you stand firm in God, in the Word of God. Right? So Peter tells us that we must stand firm. And here's something. None of us can say that we don't fall into sin. We all fall and we all stumble all the time. That's why Peter is saying it's important that you stand firm. So for the last time, maybe this year, we're going to be reading from the book of 1 Peter. Again, today we're on week 16, and we're going to be finishing up. We started, believe it or not, 6 months ago, back in September, but now we're finally coming to an end. And through today's passage, what Apostle Peter will eventually tell us is this. Think about this. Does anyone know how Apostle Peter, how he dies? Can anyone tell me? How does Peter die? Anyone know?
Crucified.
Okay. We get crucified, good. How does he? Ooh, there we go. Oh, just like a cross, right? Upside down. If you remember, Peter eventually he gets crucified and he dies on the cross upside down. And before he finishes the letter, again, what he wants the believers to know is this: Christians, we must stand firm. We must stand firm. So we're going to be talking about 4 reasons why, okay? 4 areas in how and why we need to stand firm. The first thing that we're going to see, it comes from verse 6 through 7. Let's read the first one together. Can we go next slide? Actually, right after that. Oh, maybe after that. There we go. Okay, let's read it up together. All right? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Prerequisites to standing firm.
Let's read it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Prerequisites to standing firm.
Okay, so what is the prerequisite of standing firm? Peter will talk about it in verses 6 through 7. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 and 7. Let's read it together on 3. Right? 1, 2, 3.
Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time He may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on Him, because He cares for you.
Amen. What Peter tells us is this: in order for you to stand firm, there's something that you must do. And the posture of you standing firm is that you stand in humility. If you are a man of God or a woman of God, if you want to stand before God, this is how you stand before God. You stand firm by being humble before God. If you recall from last week, this is what Peter talked about. He said it's important that Christians, that we clothe ourselves in humility. And if you remember the word clothing, right? It actually has an image and a picture of a slave that's wearing an apron. And this is what Peter was saying. If you're a Christian, your posture should be that of a humble person. You need to lower yourself. And last week how we ended the passage was this: for God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Now in verses 6 and 7, Peter, he carries on with this idea of humility. He wants to continue on with this idea of humility. We are to humble ourselves in what? Here's something very important. If you look at the verse, it says this: humble yourself, therefore under what? The mighty hand of God. You are to humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. The word mighty hand of God, it actually speaks of 2 of God's attributes. The first one is this: that God is sovereign. That God is in control of everything and anything. And the second thing that it talks about is this: it actually talks about the power and the mighty power of God. Let me ask you a question. If you are a Jew, right, living at the time that Peter wrote this letter, okay, maybe about 2,000 years ago, right, and you hear the word or you read the word mighty hand of God, what book of the Bible should you remember or recall? What event in the Old Testament should come into your mind? There's a story where the word, the mighty hand of God, it repeats over and over and over again. Can anyone remember or recall? Not quite. Okay, I can say some kind of word. Okay? Moses. Let's get out of here. Exodus. Right? Okay, plague. That's one of them, right? If you are a Jew, right, if you're living in the Old Testament time, whenever you hear the word mighty hand of God, you know what you should remember? You should be thinking, oh, I remember that passage. This passage was written in the book of Exodus. How God is sovereign over all things, right? How God is even sovereign over Pharaoh and his mighty Egyptian army. How our powerful God sent the 10 plagues to Egypt. And also how God departed the Red Sea, right? This event that happened in the Old Testament, right? People knew it as, wow, I know this. It was when the mighty hand of God was upon us. Right? So when Christians at the time, they heard the word mighty hand of God, they automatically thought of two things. The power of God and also the sovereignty of God. And what today's passage, Peter is saying is this. If you are a Christian, if you want to stand firm in the word of God, this is how you do so. You stand under the mighty hand of God. We are to go under the same hand that sent the 10 plagues and demolish the most powerful empire at the time. And what's interesting about this text is this, right? The same mighty hand of God that destroyed the Egyptians, that brought the Israelites out of Egypt, what Peter is saying is, you guys are under the same mighty hand of God. But here's something more interesting. If you recall, the people that Peter is writing this letter is, right? Those people, they're going through persecution at the time, right? They're going through hardship at the time. But Peter wants to remind them, you know what? Our God is sovereign. Meaning God is in control of everything in all situations. Even when God delivered the Israelites out of Egypt, right? That was under the mighty hand of God. And even now, when the situation is a little bit gloomy, it's dark, it doesn't seem like there's light, even though you're being persecuted at this very moment, what God wants to tell to His people, to Peter, is this. Even now, at this very moment, you are under the mighty hands of God. That God is in control of all things. If you recall, Christians at the time, they're being persecuted. Right? If you're a Christian, especially if you're a leader at the church, what will happen to you? They'll get you down, they'll tie you up, they'll literally put you up on a pole, right, up on the street, and they'll burn you alive. At times, they'll get you, and then they'll throw you into the Colosseum where animals will come and they'll devour you. And not only that, you know how they did? They put animal meat all around you. They'll tie up like chicken or, like beef, whatever, they'll tie it up in your body, and they'll throw buckets of blood all over you. Why? When you go out, tigers and lions, they're thinking, oh, fresh food, blood, not blood. We want to kill you, we want to devour you. But throughout all these, what Peter is saying is this, you know what? I want you to still remain humble before God. It is because it is everything, right? Whether the Egyptians, the Israelites coming out from Egypt, or now you're being persecuted, what Peter is saying is this, everything still is under the sovereign plan of God. In their suffering, in everything that happens, Peter is saying God is still sovereign, God is still in control. So I want you guys to submit yourself before His wise counseling. That's the teaching that Peter is telling the believers at the time. That they are to trust in God at all times. The mighty hand of God. Perhaps some of you guys here in this room, you guys are also suffering at this very moment. Maybe you're going through a season of time where things are not too bright. Maybe perhaps the GPA that you got last semester is nowhere near what you wanted. Or you might not be at a school right now where you're hoping for when you were a senior or junior in high school. Maybe perhaps the relationship and the friendship and even some of the friendship within the church is not what you were hoping for. Maybe within the past 12 months, right, your walk with God, it has been kind of dry. Maybe it's frustrating, it has been difficult. Maybe you're going through a hard time in life. But what Peter is telling us through this passage is this. Remember the mighty hand of God. That God is still sovereign, that God is still powerful. Therefore, I want you to humbly submit yourself before God. What are some practical ways of responding to God? Maybe if you're prideful, one of the questions that you have before God is this. God, I don't like your sovereign plan. You know what? I really don't like your plan. You know what? I don't even know I can really, trust your doctrine anymore. Or another practical way of responding to God could be through anger and through just complaining about everything in life. Right? Or maybe you can even question if God is real. Right? All of this, right, this is a reaction of someone that is prideful. So again, Peter is saying, don't be arrogant, don't be prideful, but I want you to submit yourself to Him. When you are humble before God, right, you will be able to stand firm. So why should we continue to trust in God and obey in God even when we are suffering? Even when we're going through a hard time, why should we trust in God? And why should we submit ourselves to God? It continues in verse 6 and 7. And this is what it said. So that at a proper time that he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties upon him, because he cares for you. Well, Peter is saying this. You could trust in God. You could humble yourself before God, before the mighty hand of God. Why? Again, because God is sovereign. Because God is in control of all things. And God is orchestrating your whole life so that at the end, in His time, He could exalt you. He could lift you up. And from this mighty hand of God, here's something else that we can learn from, right? The mighty hand of God is sovereign. The mighty hand of God is powerful. And another thing about the mighty hand of God is, if you remember from the story of Exodus, is that God will always deliver His people. That God will always save and rescue His people. Therefore, we can trust in God in His proper time. Why? Because when the time comes, He will exalt you. Therefore, we can cast all of our anxieties, all of our worries upon God. Right? He doesn't say cast some of your worries, but He says all your worries, all your anxieties, you could give to God. You can surrender everything. So here's the question. When is that timing? When is that timing that Peter is talking about? When is God's timing when He will exalt you? Is it today? Maybe tomorrow? Maybe a year from now on? Maybe when you finish reading the whole Bible, when you go on a mission trip? No. That's not the idea, right? Ultimately, one thing we do know for sure is this, right? That when we go to heaven, right? When we pass into glory, yeah? When that day comes, we will spend eternity with God. Right? And that day, when that day comes, we will no longer suffer. Therefore, we will be able to stand firm in God. The prerequisite of standing firm is this, that you remain humble before God. So once you have this humble posture, what can we move on to? The second thing that we can move on to is this, the practice of standing firm. The practice of standing firm. We're going to read verses 8 through 9. Once you stand in humility before God, then you're ready to stand firm in your faith. Verses 8 through 9. You guys ready? Let's read it together on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brethren throughout the world.
Right? The passage that we looked at, here's something very interesting. Right? In the passage that we looked at, we are told to be sober-minded. And if you remember from the book of Peter, right, this is also a phrase, also a train of thought that Peter has been repeating over and over and over and over again. Even a few weeks ago, the word sober-minded, it came out in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 7. Right? Again, this is a picture image that Peter has for us. What he's saying is this: don't get drunk. The image that he wants to portray right now is this. It's the opposite of a drunken person. Why? Because when you're drunk, your judgment is off, right? Your mind is foggy. You can't think straight. But instead, what Peter wants Christians to be is this, that you remain sober, right? Of course, he's not talking about literal drinking and literal sober, but he's talking about in terms of spirituality. In terms of your spirituality, that you are awake, that you are sober, that you're able to think straight, and you're able to understand the will of God. If a temptation comes to you, through the Word of God, you're able to think straight and go in the right direction. Right? Peter is talking about spiritual awareness. He's saying, make sure, spiritually speaking, you are on point. You are sharp. So Peter tells us to be sober-minded. And on top of that, here's another word that he adds. Not only are you to be sober-minded, be sharp, be ready spiritually, be sober, but he says this, be watchful. Why should Christians be watchful? This is because you don't want to be drunk when you are fighting a hungry lion. Right? The word goes on, it says, make sure you're sober-minded. Why? Because the devil is coming at you. He wants to devour you. He wants to kill you. He wants to eat you alive. He's like a roaring lion. That's the picture image that he has. Therefore, you need to be ready and you need to be watchful. I'm sure many of you saw the opening ceremony of Pyeongchang Olympics, right? I actually stayed up on Friday night. Actually, I went to sleep and then I woke up at 3 and I saw the opening ceremony live. And in this opening ceremony, I don't know if you remember it, but they had this white tiger, and the name of the white tiger is Suhorang. Suhorang, right? It's Suhorang. Anyone know what the name means? Suhorang. Okay? Suhorang, I think it means something like powerful suho, and then Rang comes from like Horang, right? So when you saw this picture, can you go to the picture? Right? I saw it, I was like, okay, not bad, it could have been maybe a little bit better. But an image that came into my mind, and one of the words that came into my mind is, wow, this tiger is kind of like a majestic, beautiful, like tiger. It's powerful, but yet at the same time, you're like, wow, it's kind of beautiful. But what Peter has in mind is not this elegant, beautiful, majestic-looking animal that he's talking about. It's actually very, very different. When Peter is writing this letter, he's telling Christians, I want you to be sober-minded, I want you to be awake, watchful, because the warring lion is coming after you. It's because of this. As Peter was writing, he knew very well about the persecution that was going on at the very time, right? People that he mentored and brought to Christ, his own friends, partners in the gospel message, some of them were thrown into the Colosseum, right? And by this warring lion, they died. Right? And Peter knew exactly, and not only the Peter, but even the readers of this letter, people that received the letters, they knew exactly what Peter was talking about when they mentioned the word warring lion. So he says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls like a warring lion, seeking someone to devour. And this lion, of course, as I mentioned, is the devil, is our enemy. He is dangerous. He wants to destroy the church. He wants to destroy you and your family. He is the enemy. He's coming for you. His goal is not just to wound you, but he wants to kill you, and he wants to destroy you. Therefore, Peter goes on in verse 9. Can we go back to the passage again? Therefore, Peter goes on, and he says this. That's why I want you to get away from him. That's why I want you to resist him. Right? But instead, be firm in your faith. Stand in your faith. Right? Knowing that the same kind of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. Peter understood what it meant to be a Christian. He knew that Christian life was difficult. But yet, he says this, even though Christian life is difficult, I want you to remain firm, stand in your faith, even under persecution. Even when you are being, even though when you're going through hardship, even though when you are suffering. So one of the ways that we fight the evil, fight devil, is this. Well, Peter says this, I want you to be encouraged. Here's one way that we fight temptation. One way we do that is this. We remember and we get encouraged by our fellow brothers and sisters throughout the world that are actually living for the faith right now. And even in this very moment, they are being persecuted. What Peter is telling the suffering Christians is this. I know you're suffering, but you're not in it alone. There's other Christians throughout the world right now, at this very own time, that they are also going through the same thing that you're going through, even worse. So be encouraged. Even now, think about this. Even now, think about our fellow college ministry brothers and sisters in different campuses, right? We're in SoCal. I know SoCal is kind of liberal, but compared to people that may be up in Berkeley, right? You guys have it easy. Why? Because in Berkeley, if you're a Christian, then you can do something like Wang Ju, right? Why are you so stuck to the old fashioned? People will give you a hard time. But not only that, I want you to think about fellow Christians that are around the world that are being persecuted for their faith, even right now at the very moment. Think about all the churches in Europe, Do you know what's going on in Europe right now? Christianity is declining. Even now, churches are closing down. If you're a Christian, you get persecuted. You get mocked for being a follower of Jesus Christ. Think about all the Christians in the Middle East. If you are a Christian in the Middle East, most likely your family members, I'm talking about your literal dad, mom, brother, right? They will disown you. They say, you want to be a follower of Christ? You know what? You're no longer part of my family. Get out of here. Okay? Not only that, some of them, they go to jail. And in severe cases, some of them, they even die. Think about Christians even at this very moment that are in North Korea. In North Korea, if you are a Christian, you die. In North Korea, if you carry a Bible and someone finds out, you will be executed. What Peter is saying is this: you know what? I want you to stand firm in your faith. Practice standing firm in your faith. And be ready, be sober-minded, and be watchful, because the enemy will come and get you. But as the enemy is coming and getting you, they'll try to get you. Again, stand firm in your faith, and I want you to be encouraged, because you are not alone. We're not the only Christians in this world. There's thousands and thousands of other people throughout the world. So be encouraged. Now let's look at the third point. The paradox of standing firm. The paradox of standing firm. Verses 10 and 11. Let's read it together on 3. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3.
After you have suffered a little while, God will all grace you is calling you to continue in the grace of Christ. So restore, strengthen, and establish you. To him be the dominion forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
We're done.
We're done. Okay. Not quite. There's verse 12, 13, and 14. Okay? So here's something very interesting. There's paradox of standing firm. You would think standing firm, okay, I gotta, get my legs all strong, I hold on to the word of God, me trusting in God, and I'll be able to stand firm. But actually it's not. It's not us doing the standing, but it's actually God holding us up. It has nothing to do with us, but it has everything to do with God. Peter reminds us that our suffering on earth will not last eternity. Right? One day it will come to an end. Any tough right now? The suffering that you're going through right now, good thing is this, it's only for a little while. And if you remember in 1 Peter chapter 1, this is how Peter starts. Right? The suffering that you're going through is only for a little while. What is this little while? Here's the good news and here's the bad news. Okay? Little while means that eventually we're going to get out of suffering. We're going to experience peace and joy with God. Right? But the bad news is that this little while, it could actually mean that it could be for the rest of your life here on earth. Right? But one day, we know for sure that this is temporary. But one day, when we go to heaven, there is no longer suffering. With Jesus, there is no pain, just joy. No pun intended, kind of. Okay. This is because God of all grace has called us to His eternal glory in Christ. So as you're going through suffering, remember where you are heading to. Once you have your focus not set here, but on your final destination, it won't seem too bad. And think about this. Standing firm, we think, is all about us. It's all about us, having a strong leg, standing firm. But here's the paradox. It's actually not about you and I. It's actually everything about God. It is because of God. God is the one holding your feet. God of grace is holding on to you. And Peter goes on to say this. God will, and he talks about a couple things that God will do. God Himself, He will restore you. He will confirm you. He will strengthen you. And He will establish you. And this is how we know that it's all about God. Okay? What does Peter mean when he says God will restore you? It literally means that you will return back to wholeness. And this word is usually the word that Peter is using is usually at the time it was usually used during the medical time, right? You have a broken bone, and what the doctors do, they mend it together. They bring it back, and it becomes healed again. That's the word picture that Peter has in mind. And usually doctors at the time, they use this word and they say restore, right? It's like you have a broken bone, you put it together, and it becomes one. Goes back into place. And another word that Peter has in mind is this. Fishermen also use this word a lot. And the wording when they use this was this. They go fishing, they use a net, right? And if you use your net for a long time, it's kind of rip. So what did fishermen do? They mend the nets. They fixed it, they sew it back up so that fish will not escape. And they fixed the net. That's the wording that Peter is using when he said restore. And what he's saying right now is this. And this is so encouraging because what Peter is saying this. You know what? Right now, your faith as you're following God, you may feel like you're defeated. You may feel like you're broken. You may feel like you're ripped apart. You may even feel like maybe pressed right now. You may feel like you're in the jaws of a lion. Just like what Peter did, if you maybe some of you may even later on, deny Christ. But the promise that God gives to Peter is this, that God will restore you. Just like the broken bone, just like the broken net, God will restore you back into place. So standing firm is not about you. It's actually all about God. And God will also confirm you. And the meaning is to support. God is your support. God will help you in your times of need. And God will strengthen you. God is the one that will make you strong. And God will also establish you. Right? And this is the idea of meaning, you know what? God is the one that's making the strong foundation. God is the strong foundation so that you will not sink and you will not falter. So this is a paradox. That standing firm is not about you, but it's actually all about God. It doesn't depend on you, but it totally depends on God. We could overcome suffering because we have God. And this truth allows us to really bust out in a song of praise. And that's what Peter does at the end. To him, I'm going to give everything, all dominion, forever and ever. Amen. And you think, okay, Paksu, this is the end of the message, right? But there's actually one more, right? We saw that in order for you to stand firm, you need humility. We saw that there's a practice of standing firm, that we need faith in God. And the paradox of standing firm is that it's not about you, but God holding you. And now we're going to see the pictures of standing firm. Pictures of standing firm. Verses 12 through 14. And before we read, let me just show you what Peter is writing about. Peter, as he is finishing up his letter, he wants to mention some of the friends that he's actually, been working with. He wants to encourage the believers who are suffering. And as we read this letter, we see pictures of people, and we see pictures of what it means to stand firm in the Lord. Verses 12 through 14. Let's finish the budget. You guys ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3.
By Silvanus, faithful brother as I regard.
So we see 4 pictures of what it means to stand firm. The first guy that we're going to see is a guy by the name of Silvanus. And can anyone tell me, what does this name sound like? Where else in the New Testament did you hear this name? This is a long version of what name? I heard it. Good job, Silas. Right? If you remember, there's a guy by the name of Silas. And who is this guy Silas? And why is he mentioned here? He was a travel buddy of Paul. And he was also a friend of Peter. Here, this is what Peter says. He says of Silas that he's a faithful brother. Right? And another thing that's interesting about Silas is this. As Peter is writing this letter, someone needs to deliver this letter to people that are scattered throughout Asia. Right? And we mentioned the 5 cities in the beginning. Guess who took this letter and delivered it to the people? It was Silas. Silas was the one that on foot he literally had to travel everywhere. Think about it, right? The total distance at a minimum will be 250 miles on foot. Okay? I know you're not surprised, but think about it. We're not talking about bicycles, we're not talking about skateboarding, car, right? We're talking about on foot. And here's why Peter tells him, you know what? I love this brother. He stands strong, and he's a picture of a person that stands strong because he calls him faithful. Not only that, if you remember, at the time that Peter is writing this letter, what's going on in the Christian world? Persecution. Now imagine this. I said, if you're a church leader at the time, most likely you're going to get thrown in prison. You'll die, you'll get burned, you'll get lit, right? If Silas ends up carrying this letter that Paul writes, back then they did not have copy machines. You only have one letter, and it was meant to be circulated. He goes to one city, have everyone read it, so he'll stay there for a few weeks, you'll get it, and you'll want the next letter, you'll share the letter, you'll get it, and you'll go on, Think about this. At the time, persecution was rapid. Think about this. Every time that you're traveling, I guarantee you, whenever you saw a Roman soldier, his heart pounded. If he catches me, I'm like, GG. I don't want that. Right? So there's a risk that is involved, but he faithfully stood firm in what he was called to do. This is the first picture of a person that stood firm. The second picture that we see of standing firm is this. Peter goes on to write and he says this. She who is at Babylon, who is likewise chosen. And most likely what Peter is talking about right here is this. Peter is most likely referring to Christians, the church that are in the capital city of Rome. And if you recall, Babylon was the capital city of a long time ago, right? Babylon was the capital city of the pagan world, right? There's so many pagan worship, false worship, people worshiping false idols in that city. Likewise, at the time that Peter is writing, the capital of the pagan world, the Roman Empire, is of course Rome, right? But what Peter wants to tell people is this. Although this is the capital of the pagan world, there's so many false religions, so many evil going on in the city. What Peter wants to do is this. Peter wants the remaining Christians throughout Asia to know that, you know what? Christians here in Rome, even though there's so many persecution going on, so many hardship going on, we are standing firm in the Word of God. We're actually okay. We're being persecuted, we're going through hardship, but we are standing firm. That's the second picture of standing firm. The third picture of standing firm is this. We see a guy by the name of, verse 3 to the end, Mark. Right? We see a guy by the name of Mark, and Peter actually calls him my son. So was Mark the literal son of Peter? No. What Peter is talking about is this. He was a spiritual son of Peter. Mark, maybe you're thinking, Mark, oh, I know him because he wrote the Bible. And maybe you're thinking, oh, Mark, he must be one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. But actually, Mark was not one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. He was a young follower of Jesus Christ, whom Peter later takes under his wing. Mark is also a picture of restoration. Here's something very important about Mark, the life of Mark. If you study the life of Mark, and if you study the life of Paul, and especially when you look through the book of Acts, here's what you'll realize. Mark and Paul, they knew each other. Okay, bonus question. If you get this right, I'll give you that applause. Okay? Who was Mark's cousin? Actually, no. It's a little bit harder than that. It starts with the letter B.
Bartholomew.
I heard two different names. Give me narrow it down. It's like a country boy. Barnabas. Okay? So Mark and Barnabas, they were cousins. And here's why this story is so interesting. Paul, when he goes on his first missionary journey, this is what he does. Paul, when he goes on his first missionary journey, this is written in Acts chapter 13. He takes Barnabas, and Barnabas goes, you know what, Paul? You know what, let's take my cousin. Let's take Mark and Paul. So they go, three of them, they go in their first missionary journey with Paul. But something shady happens in the middle. Okay? We don't really know the detail, but there's a split that happens. And in the middle of the missionary journey, I'm not talking about at the end or before, like I'm not gonna go, but in the middle of the missionary journey where Paul, Barnabas, and Mark is going, you know what Mark does? You go, I'm done, dude. I can't take this anymore. Alright, we don't know the details about it, but we do know that Mark goes, you know what, I'm gonna quit. Forget this, I can't, too much for me. Right? So in the middle of his missionary journey, he quits and he leaves. Barnabas was Mark's cousin. So something interesting happens. During Paul's second missionary journey, this is what Barnabas comes up to Paul and he goes, you know what, Paul, remember my cousin, Mark? Yeah, it's kind of shady. Yeah, you know, he left us, but you know what? Let's give him another chance. I think it'll be okay, right? Let's give him another chance. And if we give him another chance, I'm pretty sure he's not going to bail on us anymore. He'll go all the way through. And this is what Paul says. Heck no, right? This guy, he bailed on us in the middle of a mission trip, right? I'm not talking about like training or afterwards. In the middle, right? So as you know, this summer we're going to go on Amazon. Let's say I take like all of yours. And in the middle of it, you know, Michael, he goes, forget it, Pastor, I'm tired, man. I was in Korean barbecue. So it's like, you know what? I'm gonna catch a flight and I'm gonna go back to LA. A week before it ends, in the middle of it. And if I come back, I guarantee you, like, I'll be like, hey, Michael, you know, it's okay. But inside I'm like, no. You're really good. What? But Paul, he goes, Barnabas goes, hey, can we take Mark again? And Paul goes, hey, no, we're not gonna take him anymore. You know what? He's no good. So this is what happens. Paul says no, because I don't want to quit her. So Barnabas and Mark, they go on their separate mission journey. And here's something interesting. You know who Paul ends up taking? The guy that we just met, Silas. And they go together. So Paul and Silas, they go. And Barnabas and Mark, they go. So we're thinking, oh man, there's no restoration. Paul hates it. It's going to come to an end. Well, here's something interesting. When we look at the end of Paul's life, the last book that Paul wrote, okay, this is not in Bible order, but the last book that Paul actually writes before he dies is 2 Timothy. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 11, this is what he says about Luke. He writes, Luke alone, this is what he writes about Mark. Luke alone is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you. For he is a very useful man, right? For he is very useful to me for ministry. So one thing we do know is this, that there's a picture of restoration at the end of Paul's life. He forgives him. And at one time, Paul didn't like him, but at the end, you see a beautiful picture of restoration. And something else I found very funny is this. Peter ends up discipling Mark. Right? Peter ends up discipling Mark. And here's something funny. If you look at the life of Peter was once also a critter and a deserter, right? He said, I don't know Jesus Christ. Forget it. He kind of quit on the way, right? And when he saw Mark, who was also a critter, I think Peter, his heart kind of like went out. He's like, you know what? I quitted on Jesus. Mark, you quit on Paul. And you know what? I'm going to bring you under my wings and I'm going to take care of you. And I'm going to show you what it means to be restored back into faith. And all this we need to remember. The reason why we stand firm is because of God and not because of us. And this is a beautiful picture of ministry. And finally, the fourth picture as we come to an end with 1 Peter is this. One another. The fourth picture is one another. As we interact with one another, this should be a picture of Christians, believers, standing firm together. And he says this at the very end, right? Greet one another with the kiss of love. Greet one another with the kiss of love. That's a commandment that we are given. We may kiss one another. I'm just kidding, Eric. Don't be so happy. Right? This is a cultural thing. At the time, this was a cultural norm to go in and then, do the side kiss. If you did that here, I would slap you. So no shame. But in terms of us, LMVC language, how would that look like? You go up, you handshake, you give a side hug, you give a fist bump, right? That's what it means. You greet one another with a warm welcome, right? What up, bro? Hey, yo, for Eric, maybe slap him. Okay. But you get the picture, right? We stand together with one another. And finally, as Peter ends this letter, he says this, peace to all of you who are in Christ. Remember that peace comes when we are in Christ. As you go through hardship in life, remember that we are to stand firm in Christ. That we submit ourselves before God, that we place our faith in Christ as He stand firm, and that as we stand firm, we need to remember that it's not us, but it's God that's holding us. And as we stand firm, remember our fellow brothers and sisters that are standing firm alongside us. Amen? Let's pray. Father God, we want to thank you, Lord, for who you are. And God, we want to thank you, Lord, for the book of 1 Peter. And God, we want to thank you, Lord, that as we go through suffering and hardship in life, that we are not alone. That you are there for us. And God, we also want to thank you, Lord, that the hardship and the suffering that we go through, that is only for a little while. And that there's something greater awaiting for us. So God, we jump, Father God, to follow you and to trust in you, knowing that there's a reward, God, that is waiting for us. God, we jump, Father God, to fall in love with you more and more each day. And remember, would you help us to remember to stand firm, that we will be sober-minded and that we'll be watchful. We thank you. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. Let's all stand.